Hello and welcome to our Find Your Ancestors session for today. I'm Katie Stolp. I'm the local history librarian at Appleton Public Library. Thank you for joining us this evening, whether you're on Zoom or virtual or in person with us at the library. Before we dive in, I just have a couple quick announcements. First, a big thank you to the Friends of the Appleton Public Library for supporting our Find Your Ancestors series. We couldn't do this series without their support. We host these sessions monthly. So a reminder, in the summer, which we are in now, we change our time slot to the second Thursday of the month at 6 p.m. So hopefully those of you who were thinking this was Saturday are catching it now, but if not, we are recording it. So our next summer session is going to be on Thursday, July 10th, when we're going to host Christine Cohen to discuss how to track down distant cousins and living cousins to help you with your genealogy research. Then we're going to wrap up our summer sessions on Thursday, August 14th, as we host Linda Debbie to discuss how to reconstruct World War I service records. We'll also be doing an in-person cleaning demonstration this Saturday with Angie at 10 a.m. So it's kind of related to our topic today of gravestone symbolism, where we're going to allow you to try your hand at cleaning a gravestone and make sure you know all the do's and the don'ts. You might also be interested in our genealogy jumpstart series. So this is a monthly series that I teach. It's kind of geared towards those beginners. So it's on select Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Central. Our next session of that is going to be on June 24th, when we're going to discuss how to use Ancestry Library Edition and Heritage Quest, which are two great free databases that we have here at the library. That's also a hybrid session, so you can join us in person here at the library or on Zoom, though we'd love to have you in person. And then you can check out our full events calendar at apl.org or grab a printed calendar at any of the service desks to learn about what else we have got going on this summer. If you've missed any of our past sessions of our genealogy programs, you can check out our YouTube channel, but be aware not all the programs are recorded or up there indefinitely. So definitely be sure to attend live if you're able to. Today's session is being recorded and I'm going to post it tomorrow. If you have any questions during today's session, our in-person people, you can just feel free to raise your hand or shout out your questions. And then for our virtual folks, you can use the Q&A box located on the bottom of your screen, and we'll answer those questions at the end. And then at the end of the presentation, there's going to be a survey that pops up for you virtual folks that is, just a quick 8 questions letting us know what you thought of today's presentation. For the in-person people, there's handouts and surveys at the back table there. Now I'm excited to introduce our speaker today. Today we have Angie Knutson. Angie has spent the last 40 years doing genealogy. She's crawled through crumbling buildings and spent hours researching courthouse records, walking through deserted graveyards and searching on the web. Ancestors are her passion, and the more she does it, the more she falls in love with it. Her goal is to get others to fall in love with genealogy too. So today she's going to tell us all about gravestone symbolism, and hope you're fall in love with that today. Are you?
Okay. I know everybody in the room can. Okay. So we're going to start out with a symbolic death. Isn't the angel on here absolutely gorgeous? You do not see too many things like this nowadays. We have some beautiful cemeteries in Appleton. The one I favor the most is the oldest, which is Riverside Cemetery, very close to the house.
Hear you.
No, they can't. Do I need the microphone maybe?
Oh.
Or maybe I need to come by the computer.
Don't know what the issue is. I'll try this and see if they can hear you with that. Okay. It's on.
Okay, can you hear me when I talk in this microphone?
Someone says yes.
Okay, so we're good to go on this. All right. I was just commenting on the beautiful angel on this gravestone and how rare it is to find something like that, because this is quite old, and if you see something, take a picture of it, mark it down, because those are usually destroyed. Here in Appleton, we have beautiful cemeteries. The oldest, Riverside, is close to my house, and one that I frequent often when I go for walks. I absolutely love it. Love cemeteries. I have since I was a little girl. In the winter, my sister thought we'd make a library. So I took chunks in the snow and I started setting them out. She goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm making a library." And she goes, "You're making a cemetery." And I was, because that's what I wanted to do. Making little gravestones. Right. So let's hop in here.
I'll say it's still hard to hear you. I don't know what else we can do.
Unless I come over by the computer. Could you hear Katie when she was talking?
It said it was a little soft when I was talking to. I wonder if it's something with the Zoom settings in here if we change.
Katie's gonna check the Zoom settings. Hang on.
Sorry about this, guys. Try that and see if that made a difference.
Okay, does this make a difference? Can you hear us better now? A lot of people just answered.
Oh. Try again. So someone said
Okay.
soft.
Can you hear? I've got my mouth right up to the microphone. Is that better?
Someone says that is better.
Okay. So I'll be a rock singer and I'll have my mouth right on top of the microphone. But I won't sing because trust me, nobody wants to hear that. Okay, so I'm just gonna start from here. Okay, a cemetery is literally a genealogist's gold mine. You have symbols, dates, histories, pictures. You can find family you didn't know you had, relatives you didn't know you had. And if you look down on the bottom, you can see the 1838 gravestone, very common here in Appleton. We've been around a long time. Okay, hold on.
Trying to get possible. There we go.
If I turn on my volume, like my mic, then it gets echoey.
All right, so the earliest burial known was found in Africa. Okay, and it's claimed to be 80,000 years old, although they think that burials date as far back as 100,000 years old. Usually before cemeteries existed, they would dig the grave right next to the person's house, and it's kind of a big hole big enough for the whole family. I'm not sure if they just threw them in there or how they did that, but they didn't exist, cemeteries, till the 17th and 18th century. One of the oldest known cemeteries dates back 14,000 years. Okay, and if you look, a lot of the newer gravestones will have pictures on them. Some of them are pretty classy, but some of the older ones have etchings on them. I actually did come across one at the local cemetery here. The child that was buried in that first cemetery they found, his name was Miracle. Okay, and family plots were usually not marked. So if you have an old family, it's going to be kind of hard to find the cemetery because chances are it has not been marked. Right. Years ago, they did flowers. They would use sage, mint, and other plants. That tradition of flowers for cemeteries started 14,000 years ago. And the main reason for it was to cover the smell because they did not embalm back then. So the smell was quite bad. I remember when my uncle, I heard about him passing away, they said the flowers in the room were just all over because grandma and grandpa couldn't afford to have them embalmed. So they had to have the flowers to keep the smell out. And that's why cemetery or funerals were usually the next day. The longer you waited, the smellier the body got. So you had to do it right away. Okay, so with the emergence of churches, then burials became more common. Right, this took place during the 17th century, which means the 1600s. A gravestone was usually just a cinder, just like a real slender piece of slate. And some graves were marked with a small footstone. You see this here on the bottom, that little arched part, that's actually the foot of the grave. So that's where his feet are. This is from Riverside Cemetery here in town. You can see my foot at the top of the photo. Okay, and then the other side is where his head would be. Okay, so it designated the foot end of the grave. Now, I don't know why they wanted to do that, in case you wanted to pay your respects or and just make sure you're putting flowers at the right end. But occasionally, the entire perimeter of the grave was marked with stone, as you see in this picture to the right here as well. These are rare. This is the only one that I see in Riverside Cemetery. In fact, this is the only one I've ever seen, period. So if you come across one, you got something.
Actually, in Germany, I saw some.
Oh, she said she saw some in Germany. Yeah, Europe, you're more apt to find these things.
Stones, like
Yeah,
highway stone.
and keep in mind that in Europe, you rent a gravestone or you rent a cemetery plot. So after maybe 10 or 20 years or whatever their limit is, 15, you have to dig that up and have it cremated. Okay, the oldest known cemetery in America is the Miles Standish Burial Ground. Okay, and that's in Duxbury, Massachusetts. Jonathan Alden Sr. is the name inscribed on there, and you can see that. Here lies the body of Jonathan Alden, died February 14th, 1697, 65 years of age. Holy cow, I'd be dead. So he died in 1690. During the Victorian era, about, we're going to say 1837 to 1901. My sources weren't real exact on that. Inscriptions on gravestones became more detailed, and then the monuments became more elaborate. And you can see here that it says how old he was, and that Jonathan's grave, it was actually, the grave itself was found in the early 1800s, and this was the first inscription on a gravestone was noted. He was a Mayflower immigrant. He was the son and military officer and a farm owner, and you probably recognize the names of his parents, John and Priscilla Standish. They were his parents. He built his home in the late 1600s, so he didn't make it too long past building his home. He died in 1697. Okay, from rich to poor. Okay, if you look on the left, that's an example of a pauper's grave, also called a potter's field or a common graveyard. Now, the term pauper's grave comes from the Bible and refers to the burial ground purchased with Judas Iscariot's, I didn't say that, Iscariot's coins. And I don't know how that goes to Potter's Field, but so people who couldn't afford burial or didn't have any family or relation, those are the people that were usually put in paupers' graveyards. And some of them are still there. There is one in Peshtigo, if you look, and many of the crosses are there with no names on them because they rarely ever marked the names. So also people from insane asylums, orphanages, vagrants, criminals, or carnival workers were buried in these graveyards. Poor Farm Cemetery would be another one named for it. Okay, the land on these could be reused as these people had no right to the plot. This was a free plot given to them. It's not known whether they were buried in a coffin. If it was probably very simple, a wooden coffin. So at any time, it can be dug up, the body disposed of, and the land reused for to build a house on or whatever else somebody wants, because it actually doesn't belong to them. Okay, so Victorians, ooh, she's really pretty, isn't she? For a ghost. Victorians are the ones who popularized symbols on gravestones. Of course, the Victorian era, as we know, was quite elaborate. They'd like to show they had wealth, 1839 to 1920. And each symbol they put on there had a meaning. It could be a virtue of the deceased or belief they held, or organization they belonged to, or a clue to how they entered into eternity. And they vary from country to country and region to region. So today I'm going to focus on the most common ones that you'll find here in America. Also because those are the ones that I could read. So I can't read foreign languages. So we're going to do just the ones that are common around here and the ones that you're most likely to see as you're walking through cemeteries in your area. I'm going to start with the types of stone. Okay, so and it makes a difference. So marble is 1790 to the 1920s. American-made marble doesn't hold up well. If you ever see that green stuff, or Katie, would you say it's more black or green or lichen?
I'd say green.
Green, yeah. kind of green on the covered stones. It's a marble stone. It became popular because of its bright white color, which was a really nice, refreshing change from the darkness of stone. Okay, the engraving on it holds up about 100 years. And it, not to say it won't be there after 100 years, but it's going to be increasingly hard to read. The marble imported from Italy and Greece, which, believe it or not, you could order a headstone in the Sears catalog. It holds up much better, and the engraving is often legible after 1,000 years and more. Get anything in a Sears catalog, can't you? Okay, slate is another type. Okay, that was 1650s to about the 1790s. Again, it was imported and is found on the eastern coastal cemeteries. So I didn't take a look, but that first grave we found in America is probably made out of slate. And you can often see the way a slate headstone was carved by looking at the back of it. This is showing the back of a slate. It's good detail work. It holds up as long as 400 years, but they didn't usually finish the back. They would just leave it rough, like you see, because it would cost more money to do front and back. And people back then often didn't have a lot of money.
So someone said they can hear me better than they can hear you. So can you come sit over?
I can come sit over there. Give me a second. I mean, I used to be in track and field, but not anymore.
That works.
Okay, let's see. Does this work better? Okay, we're going to go on. If you still can't hear me, let me know. Okay. All right. So soapstone, and it's not a good picture on here, but you'll recognize it by the little red flecks that are scattered throughout it. It has an iron content on it. So actually, if you have a magnet and you put it on a soapstone, the magnet will stick. Right? It's not real common here in Wisconsin. Okay, it was in it because it was usually carried from a quarry nearby. It goes all the way back 1800s, and they were hand chiseled using a sledgehammer and a hand drill. So we're not talking electric drill here, we're talking hand drill. Soapstone again is prone to darkening and growing lichen. Soapstone would be Vermont, Virginia, Brazil, Finland, possibly Montana, and parts of the Appalachian Mountains. Hold on here, it doesn't want to advance. There we go. Okay. Fieldstone, really common, used from the 1950s on. In fact, it's still used today in some places. Okay, it's used to classify a stone of unknown identity. So if they didn't know what it was, they just called it a fieldstone, and literally they pulled it out of a field. Okay, these tombstones were rarely ever carved, used a lot in the pauper cemeteries. They were used by a family who couldn't afford a carving, or maybe they thought, well, we'll do this now and we'll replace it in the future and we can afford to, but they never did. So that's why individuals with no known family or sources of money were buried with fieldstone. Fieldstone pretty much comes from just about anywhere. Limestone and red sandstone. Limestone is very popular here in Wisconsin, but it's not the best choice because it's porous and it wears down easily. Like I said, it's a really common stone in the Midwest area. So we're talking Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, Iowa, Illinois. You'll see a lot of that when you go around here. And if you've seen sandstone and limestone, you know that as rain hits it and elements and snow and ice, it just kind of starts to melt away. Red sandstone is popular on the East Coast. Okay, and you can obviously it's a red sandstone because of the red color of the stone. Unfortunately, this is another one that has a high absorption rate for water and it doesn't last. If that water gets in there, winter comes and it freezes, the stone starts to break apart. And this is Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia. Those are the places that you'll see this. Colorado, Arizona as well. All right, how not to make gravestone legible. Notice I highlighted the word not. Okay. Don't take a pocket knife and just scrape out the lichen from the letters. Oh, but I'm only going to be in the cemetery one day and I don't have the proper tools and I really want to see. Go to the office. I bet you they have the information that's on that gravestone. Don't spray shaving cream. Yep, people spray shaving cream. or other foam, wipe it off, and then read the letters from the foam that remains in there. Foam is acidic, and we talked about limestone and sandstone. That'll wear that gravestone right down. Don't do rubbings, because that eventually wears away the surface of the stone. Hey, I gotta admit, I used to do rubbings myself before I knew. Yeah, Katie's shaking her head. She did too, yeah. Don't use Dawn or other dish soap. You're thinking, well, gee, they can wash little baby ducks with Dawn. It's gotta be great for gravestones. No, not really. Vinegar, another acidic solution, they're going to deteriorate the stone. And even though you might notice it as you're doing it over the years, people do this, that stone's not going to be there, or the engraving or carving on it won't be there anymore. Also, don't use a wire brush. It will damage the stone. And I've seen people out there with a wire brush. I cannot run to them fast enough. Stop, stop. Of course, they don't know that. So, all right, let's move on. Okay, mirror reading. We are going to do this in our demonstration, or the Daughters of the American Revolution are going to do this on Saturday. Katie and I are doing. Okay, and don't try doing this yourself because, hey, who wants 7 years of bad luck? All right. So you're going to need a mirror, an assistant, and a camera. You want to kneel down across from the vertical center of the stone. So vertical center, we're talking up, down. You want to just kind of move that mirror back and forth so it reflects, so it shines on the stone. And then you should be able to read the stone. If you look in the bottom left corner of this, you can see how that works. Now, this is for stones that never face a light source. So we're talking under a tree, permanently in a dark area. This is not for regular stones. Okay, and this is just for your info. The tympanium is the top portion of the stone. It means a drum. So usually if you see the arch on there, that's what it's referencing. Plasters are the columns. There are no columns on this stone, but there are many gravestones that do have columns on either side of them. Or you'll see a column and an archway. Majuscule, uppercase letters, lowercase letters are called minuscules. That makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, the thorn, a Y with a little E attached to the top of it. This represents the word the. A Y with a little T attached up of it means the word that. So this can come in useful when you're looking at older stones. Okay, symbols, religious beliefs, such as the Christians, they used crosses and prayers. Jewish people is usually typed in Hebrew or Yiddish, the older ones are. Philosophical ideas could have been poems or just something that the person knew. Society fashions, more elaborate. We're talking, remember the Victorian age when people were very, extensive with the decoration on the stone, just like they had in their house. Usually mausoleums were Victorian era, Victorian draping of cloths. You'll see a cloth, a cement cloth, what looks like one draped over a stone. If you look for rural cemeteries, you'll find more picturesque and attractive stones. And then there was the beautification of death movement. As weird as that sounds, it was a thing. And that's when they decided to keep going stones and start making them a little more pretty. All right, so we're going to get into this here. A hand pointing up is his deceased ascension into heaven. And the hand pointing down can mean the hand of God, or unfortunately, it means they did not think the person was going to heaven. So let's hope none of your ancestors have a hand pointing down. That doesn't mean a good thing. All right, a weeping willow is sorrow. That's why it's called a weeping willow. It was one of the most popular symbols of the late 18th, so late 1700s and early 1800s. Okay, walk through and look for willows. You're actually going to be surprised by how many you find. The lamb, which is probably one of the most common symbols you'll find on children's graves. It symbolizes the innocence of the young. It can also refer to Jesus, the Lamb of God, so you will find it on adult graves as well. Angels, another one of the most common types of adornment seen. It looks like a cherub. That's usually found on the grave of children. The one on the far right, that's more than likely the one on an adult. Okay, skull and crossbones. How many of you have seen this on Halloween depictions, right? So we're going to start with the arches and the gate, though. That often represents a passage into the next life or a gateway into the next life. The bones, some believe a pirate is buried there. And yeah, pirates did have bone symbols on them. They're sometimes accompanied by a skull, which is a symbol of mortality or the shortness of life. A winged skull and crossbones, which was a little later on when they decided not to make them quite so gruesome, so they jazz them up with some wings. That means the soul fleeing mortality. So in other words, the soul taking off and going to heaven. All right, a clock, the march of time, and on the old stones, it's usually stopped at the time of death, and I have seen this on a gravestone. This person died at what looks like to be 6 o'clock. And in houses, when people died, they would stop the clock and they would put a black shroud over it. That was done for this reason, so that they knew what time the person died before they took notes, before they had video or recording on their phone, or even did death certificates. This helped them remember what time he died. Wheat, I have seen that for a farmer. Corn is used as well. Okay, it also represents spiritual goodness, rebirth, as well as the flight of the soul into heaven. Now, I'm not getting how corn represents the flight of the soul into heaven, but that actually is what it does. Okay, a broken column. If it's not broken, sometimes you'll see these, it's because age broke it off or someone broke it off, but it represents a life cut short. So we're probably looking at a younger person on these, maybe a teenager or someone in their early 20s. Now, the next one is interesting, the handshake. It can represent the welcoming of a soul into heaven, but this one particularly, if you look at it, the hand on the left looks very feminine and the hand on the right looks masculine. You can tell by the bracelet on the hand on the left. Okay, this is traditional wedding attire, and it's usually put on the grave of a husband and wife buried next to each other, representing the bond that they shared. It could also mean, if there's only one person buried there, it could be a reunion with the deceased. So someone up in heaven who has already passed away, this is meant to be that now the person that just passed away is going through reunion with them. All right, and a harp, music to God. And the key, I have not seen too many of these, and I have not found a one in the cemeteries here, is an entrance to heaven. The lamp means knowledge or spiritual immortality. Now, the palm I have seen, one of the things it means is conquering life over death. Now, the Bible, the book, is usually the Bible, but sometimes, like this one you see here, it opens up and it tells a little something about the person who is deceased. So it could mean the book of their life, the book of life, the book of that person's life. An anchor, very common, seen on many military stones, can also mean hope. A mortar and pestle, medical profession, so a doctor or a nurse or a pharmacist. And then candle, of course, means life. And the one in the bottom left, that is a very recent grave. You notice how it's clearer and the etching. Okay, birds are very common, and not just doves. There's all kinds of birds on cemeteries, but the dove is the most common one. And like I stated earlier, it's a symbol for Christian and Jewish religions. It represents peace, innocence, purity. Sometimes you'll see a bird with its wings up, as you do in the second photo. It's the soul's journey to the afterlife. A dead bird, not a real one, right? A dead bird means a life cut prematurely. I have never seen this on a stone, but like I said, the farther you go on the East Coast and the east side of the country into the earlier colonies, you're going to see more of these things. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier in the Victorian age with the cloth draped over it. Okay, it's associated to carry the ashes of the dead. It doesn't mean that this urn actually has ashes in it. But if there's this cloth or shroud draped over it, it represents the veil that separates the living from the dead. Just like in old churches, there's always a veil that separated the Eucharist. It's the same meaning, okay, and the thin boundary that separates them. It also could be protection for the soul as it travels from this world to the afterlife. I have not seen a whole lot of these, but I bet you if you walk through an older cemetery, you will see quite a few, not always with the urn, but you will see maybe just a drawing of a veil on a tombstone. Okay, palm branches you will find a lot of. Death, resurrection, life conquering death. Willow tree again, mourning and earthly sorrow. Shoes, an empty or one overturned means the loss of a child. Okay, these, sometimes I've seen real shoes or bronzed shoes. I haven't seen real, excuse me on that one, but I have seen bronze shoes placed on a cemetery. And those were the actual shoes of the child that died. Olive tree is peace, reconciliation between God and man. And it's usually not a tree, usually it's just an olive branch, and it might be in the dove. All right, I have seen one of these at Riverside. This is the wing skull. It's not commonly seen in areas outside of the colonial states, so it's actually kind of interesting that I got to see one at our cemetery here in Wisconsin. Okay, Puritans on the East Coast, they believed that humans had little chance of entering heaven, as really depressing as that is. So as the times changed and they realized that that was kind of morbid and kind of depressing, they updated the meaning of the gloomy skull and the crossbones to represent the fleeting nature of life. So therefore the wings to make the soul fleet. A more human looking face will be used. This one isn't as creepy as some of them I've seen. And sometimes a cherub replaces the skull. The winged skull is rarely used today. I can't think of the last time I've seen a recent stone with one on. Okay, Jewish graveyards. We have two of them that I know of here in Appleton. They're usually all Jewish. So they have their own graveyard and they have many common symbols, but not limited to just these. The menorah, the Star of David, of course. The Kahanim hands. Now, I don't think I'm pronouncing that right. The forefingers and the thumbs have to be touching to represent a Jewish grave, and it means blessings flowing. The picture on the left is a Levite picture, and it means that that person is a symbol of the tribe of Levi. If you live around here in Appleton, the two ones that I'm talking about, the Jewish graves, are across from Appleton Papers. There's an older one, and then there's a newer one on the other side of the fence. Sometimes you'll notice that there's stones or there's coins placed on there, very common in Jewish. These have to be placed on with the left hand when they're placed on gravestones. And they symbolize a gesture of remembrance, respect, connection to the deceased, and just to show that you were there visiting the grave. And we'll go into that. Okay, so particularly on a military grave, you also see them. It signifies respect and honor, and it can communicate a specific message depending on the denomination. So it's different meanings between the visitor and the deceased. So here's the general meanings. A penny is someone that visited the grave to pay their respects. So that could be a friend, a relative, pretty much just anybody who came and wanted to let the person know who might still be alive that's related to this person, that someone came there and paid their respects. The nickel indicated that the visitor trained at boot camp with the deceased, so a fellow military person. The dime means the visitor and the deceased served together in the military in some capacity, whether it be in war or just at boot camp or somewhere on the base. It just means that they were with that person. And a quarter indicates that the visitor was with the deceased when they died. So those are the most rare to find. Okay, we're going to go a little historical context on this. So this placing of coins dates pretty far back to ancient times, when coins were placed in the mouths of the deceased to pay Charon. Now, Charon was the ferryman that's used to transport them across the river Styx in Greek mythology. And you're thinking, well, what is the river Styx? It's a major river of the underworld. It's the boundary between the land of the living and the realm of the dead, which is called Hades. Now, a lot of people think Hades is hell. We're talking Old Testament here. Hades is just where the dead went before heaven was invented, or before Christ came to open up heaven. Okay, the river was said to be dark and poisonous. And like I said, it's the land of the dead before Jesus liberated the dead to heaven. Some descriptions, people might call it purgatory, that place in between. The ferryman, who I said was Charon, he was paid with a silver coin, which was placed in the mouth of the deceased, or it could be placed near the body before burial. This coin was called an obol, O-B-O-L, and the practice assured that the dead could pay Charon the passage to take them over. And during the Vietnam War, it became common for visitors to leave coin on military graves, especially when political divides made it difficult to contact the family. The tradition is still continues today, and especially in Jewish cemeteries, I walk through and I'll see rocks and coins placed on graves. It's just a way, like I said, for visitors to show and let the family know that someone cares about the deceased soldier or the person buried there. Right, grapes, the blood of Christ, or God's care, or the Last Supper, could represent fertility and prosperity. Lily is usually a sign of innocence, but also purity and resurrection. A lily, as we all know, is a death flower, especially the Kala lily. Rose, I haven't seen too many of these. Love, hope, beauty, and just a remembrance of the deceased. Ivy means immortality. This is very common on gravestones. If you walk around, you will see quite a bit of ivy decorated on the stone. Friendship, and daisy is usually on a children as it means purity, and then gentleness in adult. The daisy is on the far right. That's a more modern stone. I haven't seen any daisies on older stones. There's a lot of organization symbols out there, not so much today, with the exception of the Masons, as there were years ago. So the Mason is the most common symbol, and it's usually the square and the compass, which represents the tools of the stonemason and the earthly and spiritual aspects of the organization. Now, a G in the middle is often found in the middle representing God and geometry. Sometimes there's an I in the middle of the stone too. I've seen that as well. That represents the notion that God sees all good deeds that they have done on earth. A handshake symbol is a reminder that virtues need to be practiced, and that is still a Masonic symbol. And if you look on the far right in the bottom, that's where you see the I. So if you look on the left, you see the common one with the G. You might see the one on the far right too. If you do see that, that means it is a Masonic symbol and the person was a Mason. The IOOF, which is the I got to get this right, the Independent Order of Odd Fellows. It's a 3-link chain, and you can see this on the bottom left, the middle, and on the right. Other ones that you might see on there are beehive, which represents the women's part of the Odd Fellows, a dove, and the all-seeing eye again. So the beehive is the Rebecca Lodge, which is the women's organization associated with the Odd Fellows. The Odd Fellows were founded in 1819. We have a really good building here. It's called, used to be the Gabriel Furniture Store. It is apartments now, but that was where the Odd Fellows met here in Appleton. They did a lot of charitable work. Their main thing was to care for widows and orphans. Back in the day, we're talking late 1800s, early 1900s, and that was why they were established. They were called the Odd Fellows because it was just a bunch of people from all different walks of life. I don't know, could have been a carpenter, could have been a builder, could have been a shop owner, could have just been a normal person with, just a who doesn't really associate himself with anything. But that's why they call themselves the Odd Fellows. Okay, FOE, Fraternal Order of Eagles. This was founded in 1898. Okay, they usually have an eagle and it will almost always have FOE on it. Okay, and their motto is people helping people. There could be a reference to a specific branch of the deceased affiliation. I think on the far right on the bottom, there's probably a little bit of a reference there. It was founded, like I said, in 1898 by 6 theater owners who came together to discuss a musician's strike because it was affecting their businesses, as no one was playing. So they decided to bury the hatchet amongst them and found the Order of Good Things, which later became the Eagles organization. Woodman of the World. Okay, this one I found fascinating. Okay, it represents power, industry, and progress, which you see the axe, the wedge, and the beetle, which is what we call a sledgehammer today. It's often shaped like a log or a tree stump, and I bet you've seen one of these in an older cemetery. We have it at Riverside. So often the Woodman of the World memorial marker would be on the grave as well. That was founded in 1890 and was first a fraternal society. They focused on charitable services and later offered insurance to their members. They were called the Modern Woodmen of America. That was an insurance company, and it's still in existence today. Today it's called Woodman Life, and they provide financial services, life and health insurance, annuities, and investments. A lot of times they would provide the gravestone free of charge for their members. The one on the right was actually taken at our cemetery and has everything on it, so it's a rare example of a classic Woodman of the World gravestone. Knights of Columbus. I'm sure everybody has heard about these. Okay, they were founded in 1882 by Father Michael McGivney, and it was meant to provide financial protection to members' family as well as doing charitable work. Okay, the shield on it is knighthood and merciful action. The anchor represents Christopher Columbus, who is their patron. The sword represents the knight, a symbol of defense and protection. And you can see the two swords on there. The axe, if present, it is not present on this one, represents power and authority. Okay, and it's usually mounted on a for me cross, which is what this is down here on the right. Today, there's about 2 million members of the Knights of Columbus. It's open only to Catholic men over the age of 18. The whole family goes there, but it is offered to the men in the family. Famous members that you might recognize are John F. Kennedy, Babe Ruth, and Vince Lombardi, if you are from Wisconsin. The Elks. It's kind of hard to miss this one if you look at that bottom one on the right. I've never seen one like that, but isn't that cool? Okay. So there's an elk's head at the center, more like the other one that you're looking at here. And the initials BPOE, the word service, elses, it's a Latin term for elk, and a clock with Roman numerals. The hands on the clock are always frozen at 11 o'clock. This is the time when they traditionally member, the elks that is, they're members who have passed away with a solemn toast. Now, it's not only the members that have passed away, they remember friends that are not with them or living somewhere else. The lodge number is also listed. So this originated in Europe. And when there was a lights out ban, which is usually at 11 o'clock, that's how the 11 o'clock thing came to be about. It meant that all lights, fires, everything had to distinguish. And this kind of took place during World War II, so that bombers could not see a city as they were flying over, and then they wouldn't bomb it because the light was a dead giveaway. So they had to douse all their lights. It also in Europe, it meant a person on his deathbed because the loved ones would gather around the deathbed at approximately 11 o'clock at night. And troops were said to write to their families at 11 o'clock per the custom. This was founded in 1868, and their main purpose was to help veterans, youth, and disaster victims. Currently, there's 750,000 members and 1,900 lodges across just the United States of America. So on February 16th, 1868, the 15 Jolly Corks, those were the original men that did this, looked at a written sheet and decided to make 11 o'clock the time for their deceased members. And I'm going to read you the original course. It says, now is the hour when Elkdom's tower is darkened by the shroud of night, and Father Time on his silver chime tolls off each moment's flight. In cloistered halls, each elk recalls his brothers, where they be, and traces their faces to well-known places in the annals of memory, whether they stand on a foreign land or lie in an earthen bed, whether they be on the boundless sea with the breakers of death ahead. So that's the original one. Whatever their plight on this eerie night, whatever their fate may be, wherever they are, be it near or far, they're thinking of you and me. So drink from the fountain of fellowship to the brother who clasped your hand and wrote your worth in the rock of earth and your faults upon the sand. To our absent brothers, and that poem is called The 11th Hour, and that was the original poem that they used and still do at 11 o'clock. The Shriners, everyone knows the Shriners. You've seen them in the parade and their little bikes. If you look at the symbol on the right, it kind of looks a little bit similar to the Mason, except they use the sword, but they use a crescent moon and a star. You could see the head of a sphinx on the marker. I have never done that. It represents brotherhood, charity, principles of fellowship, relief and truth. It also represents the thousands of children that they support. And Shriners also started, they have many hospitals. That did not come at first. The object of the Shriners is somebody went to, it was an Arabian party, and he liked all the decorations and everything about it. So the founder kind of decided to make his organization look like this. That hat on the bottom left was something that he saw at that party. And then later on, they decided to build the hospital. So it did not come into existence right away, but they did come into existence later on. Okay, this is kind of off the beaten path. I kind of like it. It's called Mary Cemetery. It's in Romania. It's a pretty cool place. It's founded in 1935. One person carved all the stones for this cemetery, and they're made out of wood, majority of them. And the first epitaph Katie, how do I say that? Epitaph, thank you. In the 1960s. He did 800 more after that. They can be comical or serious. And you look at the guy depicted on the bike on the bottom. Sometimes it depicts how they died. There's a picture of a lady getting hit by a car on one of the graves. So yeah, and they have kind of funny sayings in them. And I'm going to read you one. Under this heavy cross lies my poor mother-in-law. 3 more days should she have lived, I would lie, and she would read this cross. You here are passing by, not to wake her up. Please try. Because if she comes back home, she'll scold me more. But I will surely behave, so she'll not return from the grave. Stay here, my dear mother-in-law. And there are many more funny sayings like that. Look it up, Mary Cemetery. It is very popular, one of the most visited cemeteries in the world for that reason. And the person who does those is still alive. I'm not sure if he's still making them, but I know that he's still alive. Okay, we can go through just a few interesting markers. Okay, this is at Riverside Cemetery. Everybody here has seen this marker. The legend has it that when the owner died, his dog named Bink, it's a B-I-N-C, it looks like a G, but it's a C, kept coming to the grave day after day. They'd pick him up, they'd take him home, but he just kept coming to the grave. So they got permission from Riverside to actually bury the dog here when he passed away. And it's funny, but if you go there, there's a different handkerchief or kerchief. Yeah, they change it out on a regular basis. At Christmas, it'll have a Christmas one. This is the one that's on there now, currently for Memorial Day. In the fall, it has a fall one. So somebody still takes care of this grave. It's pretty cool. Okay, this one is about, oh my gosh, have you seen this, Katie? It's in St. Joseph Cemetery. It's about 8 feet high. I rounded the corner and I was collecting some branches from a dead tree for my daughter's art project. And I'll tell you, I turned around and I saw this thing and it was huge. And I wish I would have had another pair of shorts with me that day because it scared the crud out of me. It is huge. Now, the person is still alive, which is why I kept his name off this. But it's just, it's really beautiful when you look at it. This is a newer one. He just must have really wanted to make his way known. On the bottom, it says, on my way to the next adventure. So he just had a lot of money and he wanted to do it. But this is some of the things that are done today. To admit, that is pretty impressive. Okay, this little stone was behind that big angel person. And I looked and I thought, I wonder. And I walked about 4 feet to the right. There was another little stone. I walked about 4 feet south, another one. And then I found another one. There were 4 stones and it must have marked out the plots. They must have been markers for that person's plot. Maybe it was purchased earlier and they wanted to find a way to mark it. So that's how they did it. And it's amazing. I had to kind of uncover the dirt from this one to find it. I've never seen that before. And I suppose if we probably started digging around, which they really don't like to do in cemetery, you might find some more of this. All right, this one I found extremely interesting. On the bottom right is the entire one. It's made out of, I thought it was made out of copper, but then it wouldn't be so deteriorated. So I think it's made out of steel. So I had to look the person up. He was a Civil War veteran and it, private in Company E, 82nd Ohio, volunteer infantry. He apparently falsified his age upon enlistment because he was too young to go. 1862, he indicated the year of the birth as 1844. So he lied so he could get into the Army. He participated in the battles of Chancellorsville, Gettysburg, Peachtree Creek, and New Hope Church, among other battles. His wife is buried there, and her name is Mary, wife of J.D. Reese. His name was Jance, I think. It was something really different. And I remember that. But if you look on the bottom middle, that's what I was talking about when there are pictures. That is an etching of his wife. That is really rare that you'll see that. So she's buried on that side. And if you look at the left, that little urn that was there, there's 4 of them. They're all around the bottom. The bottom right, you can see a different, and they were different shapes. And I picked them up. They're just sitting on there loosely. Of course, I put them back, but I picked them up. So I'm not sure if that was used to put flowers in. And the middle you can see is you can kind of look through it. I didn't know if there was a flame that was in there on the very top. And I climbed up and I did look down because that's just me. On the very top, I looked in and there was a flower pot in there and I lifted it up. And there was nothing underneath it. So I don't know if, I'm thinking it was just a really elaborate place to put flowers. And it probably was stunning in its day before it rusted over. And I'm also thinking that there might have been a flame in the bottom, which was why it was still. I know that it was very expensive back in 1893. That must have cost a pretty penny, probably the equivalent to, I'm going to say maybe $100,000 today. I would have to say at least, especially with that etching on there. And that's the only etching. Oh, no, actually, when you look at the top, I take that back. Look at the top left, you see that on each side, there's an etching of someone. So they did etchings of every person who is buried there. All right, we're going to do a brief note on cleaning here. I had a little clip I was going to show you, but I'm not sure with all the problems we're having if I want to try to bring that up. Yeah. So we'll just go without it. And this is what we're going to do on Saturday. On the bottom right, you see something called D2. Okay, that is, in my opinion, just about the only thing you should use on a grave. There's other solutions out there. I've not tried them. I don't know how good they are. But look at the tools. You notice there's, I don't know if that's a metal scraper or not. You should never use a metal scraper. You should use wood or plastic because metal can damage the stone. That brush that's next to that, to the blue brush, is very soft bristled, as is the blue one next to it. And if you see on the far right, you can look at that wooden, that is a wooden one that you can scrape off some lichen with something. The brush dead center is called a tempera brush. I'm saying that right. It is really soft and probably about the only brush you might want to use to do the entire surface. I was watching a video of a girl and I actually was kind of laughing at it because she goes, I love to clean gravestones. And she's spraying it with Dawn dish soap, number one, first thing I saw. She's taken a scrub brush that you would use to scrub cement or, the tiles in your house. And as she's scrubbing, you could see it leaving marks in the tombstone. She's like, oh my gosh, it was so hard to watch this. And she's going, it's going to be beautiful. She was just kind of like a little Barbie. And then she washed it off with water. And then she started picking at it. And then she did some other things and she scrubbed again and just wire brush, just everything she did was wrong. So if you want to clean a gravestone, do it the right way and make sure that it's going to be there for years and years to come. Because if you damage it, there's no way it's going to come back. A metal brush, it seems like a good idea. It's not. If you spray the D2 on, you leave it sit for,
We treat it like a month.
okay. So Katie said she pre-treats it like a month before. And then when you go to spray it on, you should leave it on for 5 to 15 minutes when you actually go to,
Spray all the ones I want to go clean.
there you go. Okay, so yeah, that is true. That is true. And I did participate in a grave cleaning. Katie was there as well. It really does work good. And the funny thing about D2 is as after you're done cleaning it, it just gets whiter.
So works.
It just keeps working. It's so weird. And you can tell those stones that were cleaned because they are just about the whitest stones in the cemetery. They're really good. I know you can buy D2 at Walmart. I know you can find it. Yeah, Riverside sells it. Yeah, if you live in Appleton, and that's personally where I would buy it if I lived here in Appleton. If you don't live in Appleton, I know you can find it on Amazon as well. Awesome. Yeah, it's by far the best. Okay, and I was just going to read something I quickly found here about the Shriners. Was by Charles Algerman Sidney Vivian, who is a oh my gosh, success. Katie, I can't look at it, she's making me laugh. Okay, successful comic singer and dancer in the music halls of London, 1867, and then he came to New York. And everything was closed on Sunday in New York due to the blue laws. So a group of theatrical people began to make their stuff of their own fund under his leadership. They formed the organization to make sure the larder was well stocked when they had a party. And we won't go into that. All right. They called themselves, well, this is for the Elks, I'm sorry. They called themselves the Jolly Corks. So that's where that came from. Okay. And then later on, they formed the organization of the Elks and with the charitable works, but it was originally so that they could party on a Sunday. Right. But don't go around saying that. Keep that to yourself. Okay, so that is the presentation, but I really want to thank you for attending, those that came here in person. Hello. And those of you that attended online, which is, it's kind of nice that we have that option, isn't it? We got a little bit used to that during COVID, didn't we? Yeah. If you have any questions, you can email me. I have no problem with that. All right. And I'm going to hand this back over to Kate.
Question.
Okay.
Someone said they saw a tombstone with an arm holding a bell, kind of like a school bell, with a handle on the stone and a shovel.
I do. Was it an actual bell?
It was a bell, kind of like a school bell.
Okay, a school bell, if it was carved on the stone, that would be the ringing in of the person, a new life, the ringing in of a new life. Right, here we go, folks, get ready for this. Okay, if it was an actual bell on the side of the tombstone, you might find these, and sometimes there's a little pipe that goes into the ground. Okay, years ago, before embalming, and before they accidentally, or they must have done it at least once, Katie's shaking her head, she knows, yep. They would tie a string to the deceased. The string would go up through the coffin, up through the ground in a tube, usually a metal tube, and it was attached to a bell. And if he was buried alive, he would ring that bell. And that would be a symbol to someone that they need to go dig that person up. So if what you saw was a real bell, and there are a couple of them, again, this is mostly going to be over on the East Coast in the earlier graves in the Puritan times. That's what that is. I didn't want to bring that up because it's pretty morbid, but yeah, but it's, now I'm going to have nightmares tonight too. Okay. Oh, she sent a photo. You know what? That is different. Yeah, that is very different. The skull and the crossbones, of course. So this is the very early grave, Puritan times. My guess would be that that's the ringing in of his trip to heaven, the ringing in of his new life, his ascension. Or very well could represent that he was a teacher. He or she was a teacher. You know what? I don't think so though. I'm trying to figure out yeah.
In the middle too, you know, it's like almost like a badge or like a shield.
It's a shield and it's got two swords on it. This person, my guess, was a member of an organization, because if you look underneath the bell, it looks like there's something too. It almost looks like a sheaf of wheat. And I've never seen that on top of a skull before. There's a shovel there.
It's very interesting.
And it looks like feet on top of his head. I don't know. Maybe he had to dig his own grave. I don't know.
Go see it in real life.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to do some research on that, because now you've really got me curious. I have never seen that before. It does look like it's a huge grave. It looks like it was somebody wealthy and probably from a long time ago.
Person have any questions? Oh, she says it's in Scotland, so that would be a great.
Oh, yeah. Hey, okay, let's go. Everybody meet me at, okay, we're going to try to get you that picture. The graves over in Europe, like I said, are very interesting. And if you go to Germany, Poland, places like that where they had to rent a grave because they just don't have the space. They're small countries. It's not, here in America, we have lots of room. Over there, they do not. So I think the general thing is 10 to 15 years. And after that, they dig it up and you can have it cremated and take the ashes. Or if you choose not to, I'm not really sure what they do with it. And then someone else takes over that grave. In some countries, they stack them one on top of the other. So it's one casket on top, all encased, of course, in cement or, an enclosure, but on top of another one, simply because, again, they just do not have the space for the graveyards. So it's interesting if you go over there. And that's what makes it kind of hard when you're doing research on your ancestors to find their grave, because it might not be there. It might be gone. Your best bet in that case is always to go to a church or the local church. They'll have the information. The gravestone, not so much. I know that's what happened to my great-great-grandfather. His gravestone is no longer there in Poland.
Someone asked about weeping angels.
Weeping angels are just a sign. It's a symbolic sign that someone is mourning the death. The angel is mourning the death. So it's just it's sadness, basically over the death of the person, the departure from earth. Are there any other questions? Yeah,
So at Riverside Cemetery, there's a beautiful Hmong area.
yes, yeah.
So I would love to see you incorporate some of that culture, because today we're just talking about Christianity and Jewish, which is fine, but I'd love to see you incorporate some of that culture in their gravestones. If that's
I can do that.
stuff on the gravestones, the gifts that are left behind. Yeah.
She asked about the Hmong section in Riverside Cemetery, and they have some really beautiful headstones. 75% of the time they have the picture of the person on there. They either have it chiseled in or the actual picture of the person. The gravestones are quite elaborate. There's one there for a guy who was a reverend. Have you seen that one? It's amazing. There's a bench on there. It talks about his entire life. So I can do that and publish that. I don't think I can get that out to you. Let me think on it, but I can do that and look into that. Yeah, and also if you look on some of the newer gravestones, you'll find that people have encased real photographs in there. You'll see some real photographs. A lot of them deteriorate because water gets in, frost gets in, especially around this area, but that's another new custom as well. I'm sure it's quite pricey, but it's another new custom. And sometimes you'll walk through a cemetery and you'll just see a little metal, not a metal sticker, I don't want to say, but just a little metal pole, a real tiny little one, and it'll just have the person's name on it, and that's it. No birth date, no death date. That means they could afford to bury their person there, but they could not afford the tombstone. So their hope is that someday in the future, they will put a tombstone there. There are quite a few of those at Riverside that I see, and that's sad. But yeah, it is expensive to bury. Yeah.
Hey, Angie, I have a question for you. I grew up always like, my aunt lived near a cemetery and we were always told to stay out of there. Like, we cannot ride our bikes over there, even though the trails. And so I'm very fascinated by cemeteries. What is some like etiquette, I guess, for when you're going into a cemetery? Like, cause I still sometimes feel like I'm not, should I be walking on the ground? Like, knowing that like I'm walking on a plot, like what should somebody know if they're gonna be venturing?
That's a really good question. Cemetery etiquette. It is. And when you walk over it, you kind of, whoop, and you jump back a little bit. You hear the term, somebody's walking over my grave. That's actually where that comes from. And that's usually for people who have a plot there but are still alive. The etiquette basically today is just to make sure that you don't, like we said, do any harm to the tombstones. Right? If you're looking for a tombstone, you're going to walk over other people's graves. It can't be helped, and it's okay. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. They're making cemeteries more beautiful.
It's a park. It's like a park. Yep. And then you also have to think of like, when you're buried, are you gonna care if anybody walks around and?
No.
No.
Come on over.
Come on,
Look at
enjoy,
your
you
house.
know?
There anymore.
I always like think of the people too.
Exactly. Yeah.
I just researched them, for a week or so. I dove deep into the ancestry records. I believe that's important.
Yeah. I love that. That's cool.
And I'm excited about that because I chose those two stones because they had a lot of information on them. So, but I couldn't read them.
They're very dirty.
Yes, they're
There were lots.
but and lots of times it's written in German. So you will need to take a photo of it and translate it. Other etiquette is if you see a bench there, that bench was put there for you to sit down. If you want to sit down, read a book, whatever. Cemeteries are peaceful. They really are. Wildlife, seeing lots of deer, owls, fox. Yeah, all the time at Riverside Cemetery. So the basic thing is, you don't go out there and have a party. Actually, when I went through the other day to check on those tombstones that Katie sprayed, I saw two people having a picnic. Yeah, by their ancestors' gravestone. And I thought, there's nothing wrong with that.
Done that.
I-
Love
Yeah,
that.
it's just, you're just remembering. And yeah, we know that person is not there. They're somewhere else, but still it's comforting to you and it's remembering. So just remember when you're in cemetery, no yelling. I mean, well, you can yell, but I mean, no running around, no partying, don't ride your bike through the lots. Cause I've seen people rollerblade and ride their bikes. It's just be respectful. That's the number one piece of etiquette I can give you is to be respectful.
All the questions we had online, so unless there's anything else, I think
That
that's
was the farthest away we had somebody join in.
people didn't really chime in since we were having those audio issues. Nobody really chimed in, letting us know where they're joining us from.
Let us know where you came from. How far away are you? We love seeing that. Yeah. Especially if you stayed up in Europe. That's the problem. They're on a different time zone. Oh,
Massachusetts?
Massachusetts. So you can look at that gravestone that I showed, Massachusetts.
Should to clean a headstone.
Thank you for asked that. And I don't know why I didn't think of that. I had it in my notes and I didn't read it. You are supposed to get permission to clean a headstone because some people, and I talked to the cemetery person at St. Joseph Cemetery, which is connected to Riverside. She said somebody was going to clean a cemetery and the owner had a fit. He said, no, I want it to look like that. I like that look. That's exactly what we wanted. We do not want that cleaned. Yeah. So check with the office before you go in and clean it.
Right. I paid for it.
Yeah. But if you're cleaning somebody else.
Because some of them do look really cool. when
So the ones that we're cleaning on Saturday, we got permission.
Awesome, cool.
And I did go in there and they'll look up to see if there's anybody you can contact, the office will, and if they can't find anybody, they go, okay, that tombstone's really old, go ahead, we give you permission, so the office can give you permission too.
What's the
Uh,
DA over again?
The Dynasty.
Oh, nice. I love that.
That's one of them. Riverside tells them what stones to clean and if they have permission to clean that.
Didn't they just,
Beautiful job. So I was saying, advance. There's people that if you don't want to clean it or it's like a really bad one, that you want somebody who's an expert, there are experts. Of course, they charge for it, but there are people.
That's awesome.
also keep in mind that if you noticed a gravestone is broken or it's laying in the ground and you want to pull it up, don't. Because you will break it further. You can cut around it. You can take a knife and cut around it and pull the grass around it. I've done that from gravestones without touching them. There are professional people out there who will drill holes and put rods in and repair these stones for you. Don't think you can just put some cement on and do it yourself. You cannot, it will not last, and you could damage the stone. Yeah.
No, actually, just never would have thought of that.
So there's somebody from Maine, New York, Northern California. Wow.
That's cool. I love it when all these, that's what I love about Zoom, and you
Yep.
never could do this before, so we can get out all over the place.
Arizona.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
Hope to see all you local folks at Riverside at 10 a.m. on Saturday for the
Okay.
cleaning. And like I said, you guys can even try your hand at cleaning. So
Okay,
you
I'm
can see what it's
excited.
really like and learn about the people too and learn the do's and don'ts or even spot some of the symbolism around the section.
Yeah, we're gonna take a walk and we're gonna look at, really briefly, Katie and I know that there's, I think it's a dog, but you can't tell what it is anymore because years ago, people would pour bleach over those stones and it just melted. So whatever little figure was on top of this gravestone, it's gone. So we'll take a little walk around and just nearby and we'll show you some of those things.
Okay. Okay, cool. We'll see you there. Thank you. This was awesome. Oh my God.
Next session again.
We have Christine Cohen to discuss how to track down your living cousins to help you with your genealogy research.
I would love that.
See you then. Thanks, everyone.